From the tiny hamlet of Bremer Bay on the remote south coast of WA, the Ellison Marie sets off on an expedition like no other anywhere on the planet. On board, passengers from all over the world have paid $385 each for a day trip to a newly discovered biodiversity hotspot. And in these Southern Ocean waters, they'll need a hardy constitution. As you can see, it's pretty rough. We've only just left land and the wind's about 25 kilometres per hour. The swell's 3 to 4 metres and we're about an hour and a half away from the so-called hotspot. Our journey will take us to the Bremer sub-basin, about 70 kilometres offshore, where a series of underwater canyons are home to an astonishing marine food chain, culminating in the ocean's ultimate apex predator, the orca, or killer whale.
We've got one of the main paths of southern bluefin tuna migrating along the south coast. There's a big pilchard fishery inshore, so it's a very, very healthy ecosystem out here.
Paul Cross has been running charters into the Bremer Basin for 5 years. They're a mix of tourism and science.
It's very costly to run a vessel like this out to this location, but it is a citizen science because the people on this boat are funding the research that's happening. We're really grateful that the public love this location as much as we do.
Plenty of birds picking up now as well. It's a good indication they're around.
Every charter has a marine biologist aboard, like Brodie Elsdon, who admits there are more questions than answers about why the killer whales gather here.
Oh, the more we think we know, the more we realise we don't know. We're not sure yet where the orca come from before they aggregate here for the 4 months or where they go when they leave. We do have theories, but at the moment that's all they are.
Passengers are encouraged to contribute their photographs to a catalogue of the whales. So far, more than 150 have been individually identified.
Is it important to you that you get some good snaps?
Oh yeah, I reckon. That's what I'm here for. Plus the fact that what you're doing coming on this tour is also helping them carry on the research and things.
The Bremer Canyon's incredible biodiversity was first recognised by local filmmaker Dave Riggs, who helped make a documentary for the ABC in 2013 called The Search for the Ocean's Super Predator. It followed him tagging great white sharks at Bremer Bay 10 years earlier and his search for what had apparently eaten one of them. With the help of marine biologists using sophisticated monitoring equipment, he was able to identify nutrient-rich upwellings funneling from the Bremer Canyons at a depth of around 800 metres. They're linked to the natural breakdown of methane hydrate, which are crystals of water and gas. This example, filmed by the University of Bremen's Centre for Marine and Environmental Sciences, shows how they act like organic engines. In the Bremer Basin, they fuel a remarkable food chain, from microscopic phytoplankton all the way up to killer whales.
We haven't seen this congregation of killer whales in Australian waters anywhere else, really. It's remarkable. I mean, it's right here, and where you said is in these canyons areas. They're not just travelling through this area. You know, there's something going on here. We've seen them feeding. We've seen them chasing things through the water. What that is, we don't know yet. We saw a young calf, so it could be a really important area for breeding and mating as well.
The film was a huge success, showing in more than 70 countries. It shone a spotlight on the Bremer Canyon's scientific value, but also its potential for oil and gas extraction, which had been identified years earlier by Geoscience Australia.
So ironically, even though it's a biodiversity hotspot, it's the fossil fuels that are making it so.
I think so. At the very least, we don't understand how much fossil fuels contribute toward the health of our oceans.
Now Dave Riggs is helping a Japanese team make a documentary about methane hydrate systems and is developing another film idea of his own.
I think it's an unknown. You know, we don't know anything about how this system works. I mean, I think it's very unusual that we've got 37 canyons between the West Australian, South Australian border and Windy Harbour. We know that there are 4 here that have fuel in or near them. Those 4 tend to have this aggregation of killer whales and other species, whereas the other ones don't seem to. So we know so little about the mechanisms that drive this ecosystem that I think it's time to be cautious with regard to the extraction of resources.
The British company Arcadia Petroleum previously held leases in the Bremer Canyon to extract up to 500 million barrels of oil or gas equivalent, but there are currently no active exploration plans. The Bremer Subbasin was included in Australia's National Marine Reserve Network, which prevented any oil, gas or mineral exploration. In 2017, the government went further, expanding the national park zone within the reserve to add even greater protection. But there are fears the area is still vulnerable.
This marine park is a great start, but it doesn't go far enough. They can just put something outside that marine park, tap into the inside of the marine park and still have the same outcome. So we want this whole section of coastline from Albany to Esperance locked off from oil and gas, every canyon system.
From humble beginnings with just 900 passengers in its first year, Naturalist Charters is now operating for 100 days a season. And as the business grows, so does the scientific understanding of the whales.
Killer whale populations in the northern hemisphere have been studied for 40 or 50 years. We've only been studying this for nearly 10 years, so for us to get an understanding of the health of this population, we need to continue monitoring them.
Beck Wellard runs Project Orca, which has continued identifying the Bremer whales and their family groups. She's also comparing their recorded communication with other whale populations around the world.
They do have an Australian accent. They're slightly different to other killer whale call repertoires from around the world.
Do you have any idea what they're saying to each other?
No, that would be nice if we could be Dr. Dolittle and figure out what they're saying. We can only look at different types of calls in the context of their behaviour. So we can look at the calls and try relate it to what they're doing, but to understand, I think, is beyond our scope. Killer whales are really important. They're an apex predator. So we can look at an apex predator within an ecosystem, and that can give us an indication of how the rest of the ecosystem is going. Everything's connected. So by us monitoring the apex predator of this system, we can get an understanding of how the whole ecosystem is going health-wise as well. Everything filters down and everything's connected.